My name is Justin Johnson, I'm from the British Film Institute, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our very special event. And very shortly I'll be introducing you to a very, very special guest, Mr. Derek Landy. Just to say a few words first, Derek Landy spent his time writing the Skulduggery Pleasant series, which includes Skulduggery Pleasant, Playing with Fire, The Faceless Ones, Dark Days, Mortal Coil, Deathbringer and Kingdom of the Wicked. He doesn't like to brag about all the awards he's won, such as the Irish Book of the Decade, or the Red House in the UK, or all the other awards that he humbly displays on his mantelpiece. He's also far too modest to mention things like the first book being a Publishers Weekly Best Book of the Year, and having his book selected by Oprah Winfrey for the Oprah's Book Club Kids Reading List. Derek plays too many video games, reads too many comics, watches too many movies. He lives in Ireland with too many cats and too many dogs. Occasionally he talks to real people, but only when he absolutely has to. He has taught countless children how to defend themselves in the hopes of building his own private Munchkin army. The last son of a dying planet, Derek saw his adopted parents gunned down in front of him before being bitten by a radioactive spider. He is now quite ill. Derek Landy! Woo!
Hello. How are you?
All right.
I'm fine too. Thanks for asking. Oh, good. Thank you. You're so nice.
I just mentioned then about the being bitten by a radioactive spider, and you're actually not feeling very well, particularly at the moment. That's right.
Yeah. I am recovering from a cold, and on the flight over, I flew over this morning, and when I have a cold and when I'm in the air, my hearing kind of goes, so I don't know what I'm saying. I'm completely deaf. No, but I'm recovering. So yeah.
So congratulations on the phenomenal success of the book. 7 have been published. Book 8 is on the way.
Yes.
Just out of interest, in terms of like a show of hands in the audience, has everybody read all the way through to book 7, or are you at different kind of stages of different books? Have you read book 7 and backwards, so put your hand down. Oh, quite a lot. Has anybody never read any of the books? Oh, I think Derek has. There we go, that's just...
No, don't point at the stupid people. Fine. They just look at it this way. You have so many books to look forward to. You know, it'll make your life better. You stupid people.
And it's going to be 9 books.
Yeah.
Unless you decide, I guess, at any point in the future to like pension needs a bit of topping up, but it's 9 principally we're talking about.
Yes, yeah, and that doesn't include any of the adjuncts or the little spin-offs, or it's 9 big proper books, and it's always been 9, and I keep on being asked, will you write more? Especially my publisher would really like me to just keep on going.
Funny that.
Yeah. But I said no. Has always been 9 books. That's the story, and that is how I've always seen it, in 3 sets of trilogies. So, yeah.
And when you first sat down, you were writing book number 1. Obviously, at that point, you had no idea whether it could be picked up or not, how successful it could or couldn't be. Did you always, at that point, did you really have such a sort of, did you really think at that point it's going to be 9, or was that something that's just sort of developed along the time?
When I was writing the first one, I was just really focused on getting a complete book. But even in doing so, I just got, whenever I'm at events, especially like in schools or when I'm on stage and walking around, and people take pictures, they always seem to take pictures when I'm like this. So now, if I see people take a picture of this. Oh dear Lord. She's filming me. Oh, excellent. Oh, this is going to be on YouTube. Must not curse. Right. I've completely forgotten.
Well, we're talking about book 1, and actually, I think what would be interesting to know is actually kind of how much you kind of prepare in advance and how much kind of comes to you as you write the books. In terms of, do you have a kind of a master plan with a big kind of screen with all the characters on there? You know how they all interrelate, or is it really actually just up here in your mind?
I'm kind of halfway between the two. I have certain things that I need to happen in certain books for the overall plan that have been in place from the very start. But I leave it open enough so that every book, it's free enough so I can make it up as I go along. And every book has its own identity. The first book is adventure. The second one is a monster movie. The third one is a whodunit. The fourth one is a revenge flick. The fifth one is my version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The sixth one is the darkest superhero story you'll ever see. The seventh one is my science fiction. The eighth one, the one I'm writing now, is war. And the ninth one is the end of everything.
Wow. and actually, that brings on nicely to the fact that you've talked about the fact that the books are influenced by film. And you yourself, you're a massive kind of consumer. You watch a lot of films and you collect kind of memorabilia about.
I'm not a nerd.
You are a nerd.
No, I'm
sorry.
not.
You need to confront this, I think.
I'm cool.
It's a very thin line, isn't it, between coolness and nerddom.
They're nerds.
And we've chosen a couple of, or you've chosen a few trailers which we're going to kind of pepper throughout the tour, which kind of show how different films have influenced them. And as we're talking about book one, and you've talked about adventure. Tell us about your first clip.
With the first one, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to write a book. I started out writing screenplays. I got 2 Irish films made. The problem with working in film is that the writer is the most important person up to a certain point, and then the writer kind of gets relegated to somewhere behind the catering staff, because I'm the most important person. Then the director and the producers, the financiers, come on. Okay, now we want to improve the script. Can you change this? Can you change that? And I really have no choice. I can argue my point, but it's a collaboration. It's a team effort, whereas a book is just all me. So I didn't really know how to write a book, didn't know about the structure, but I wanted it to be as fun as possible. So, and I decided for the first book, it would be adventure. There'd be like magic and monsters and martial arts and murder and other N-words, mops. The ninth book is primarily about mops. So really, the kind of feel I was after was pure adventure, pure pulp, pure Indiana Jones. Like the book is nothing like Indiana Jones. There's no, there's a few tombs, but but the feel, the amount of excitement really is what I was after. And because we have this wonderful screen, you can see this is the trailer for not the last Indiana Jones movie. I would not do that to you.
Not the King of the Skull.
This is Last Crusade. So if you wrote it there, he says, and waits awkwardly in silence. Seen that movie? Good. Hands down. How many people haven't?
So they've got a treat in the store tonight.
Yes, I absolutely adore the Indiana Joneses.
1 to 3.
1 to 3, yes. That's much more for. But that was exactly the kind of feel that I wanted. And the sense of mythology and history that is in every frame. Apart from the fact that the Indiana movies also have the best sound effects. I mean, when someone gets punched in Indiana Jones, it's a sound effect that is you never hear anywhere else. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful. And the gunshots. The only other movie that has gunshots as beautiful as Indiana Jones is Die Hard. You should really watch these movies and just listen to the different things. I'm not a nerd.
And you're going to keep needing to reassure us of that, I think. Isn't
Yeah.
So Indiana Jones, obviously, and he's the all-round adventure hero. And in your world, this is Skulduggery Pleasant, who is the very well-dressed, Bentley driving skeleton detective.
And I mean, Skulduggery is obviously so based on movies that when I was a kid, they were always on TV on like a Saturday afternoon. You know, all of the Humphrey Bogarts and the Cary Grants. You know, it's and Skulduggery in some respects is the classic Private Eye. He wears the pinstripes, he wears the suits and ties, always immaculately dressed. He's got the fedora. Everyone speaks really fast and are really witty. I have a stammer, so I can't speak fast. And I developed it when I was 3, and I came down to the kitchen one morning and I just suddenly had a stammer. So when I was in school, and then in secondary school, I could never really speak fast. I could never contribute to the conversations as much as I ordinarily would have. So I think, apart from anything else, that made me appreciate the written word a lot more, because words suddenly had taken on a new meaning, like a new importance. You know, they were things that I could write and I could read, but I couldn't actually speak. And so,
and some of those conversations between Banter and Skulduggery are very kind of fast,
It's
furious, very kind of Spencer Tracy, Catherine Hepburn, kind of really quick thinking.
Yeah, it is insanely fast dialogue. I mean, if I have any strength as a writer, and I have many, the dialogue is, I think, the area in which I do excel. And when I'm starting off writing a book, I'll write, you know, like bits of chapters, but mostly, if it isn't an action scene, I will just have like pages and pages of dialogue. And then when I'm rewriting and editing, I'll go in and I'll say who's actually speaking and where they are. You know, but really, in my head, this is just pure dialogue.
It's a difficult balance, that kind of balance between humour and drama, or humour and horror or whatever, and actually often when there is a series of books and they kind of get darker as they go on, some of the humour starts to be lost, but actually that hasn't been the case so far.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and it's not easy. I mean, I was just talking about this on my blog like a few days ago. The fact that, you know, I mean, I haven't read the first few books in a while, but I'm assuming that per joke per page, there's more jokes per page in the early books than there are in the later ones. But because, you know, it's getting older, the characters getting older, the story's becoming more serious. But the important thing for me is to keep on having that inappropriate jokes at inappropriate times. Because that's what I do. I make inappropriate, this bizarre musical interlude that had no place in the script. So I thankfully Warner agreed with me. They said, this is unmakeable, we cannot make his film. So the option came back to me. I've been working on it myself for the last year and a bit.
And you've changed the screenplay from the original one?
Yes, it is now, and you know, like if it does get made, a book cannot exist on the screen because they are two completely different mediums. The first half of the screenplay is pretty much like the first half of the book, but then I go completely different. Even the story is updated to fit a movie. I personally think that the screenplay is an improved version of the book, because now I read back over my stuff and I go, oh, I wish I didn't do this, I wish I didn't do that. But with the screenplay, I can go, oh, I can fix everything. I can fix it. So I actually think the screenplay is better it has a better story than the book.
And when you're writing the books, and you know in the back of your mind now that there is a film kind of on the horizon, has that changed the way that you've approached the writing or the way the story has gone, or any of the devices of the books?
The only thing that it has altered is I figured if you're going to have a movie about a guy who's a skeleton, and you're going to have a big star to play the skeleton, the studio will want to see his face. And so they're not going to want just a skull. So I introduced in the fourth book a facade, which is a false face that flows up over his head. And he can only use it for a certain amount of time a day. But it saved me from having to describe the same old disguise that he uses whenever he's out in public. You know, the sunglasses, the scarf, the wig. So it solved two problems at once. It solved the disguise, and it solved the fact that if it does become a movie, we're going to see his face for a fair amount of screen time.
And you could use that right from film one. You don't have to wait till the
Exactly.
or whatever you introduced it.
Yeah. So.
So one of the, I mean, we talked about the humour, and I think your next clip perfectly kind of illustrates the kind of balance between kind of humour and action adventure. And it's one of the kind of classic films, you know, The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to kind of just tell us about the next clip, how that fits into the books?
Well, first of all, who here has seen the Princess Bride? Okay. I expected that because it's not a film that you would automatically have heard of. It is a brilliant film. It is hilarious. It's written by the same guy who wrote Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, which is a fantastic trip. There is a scene in Mortal Coil and I wanted a sword fight between Skulduggery and this other guy, and also China. But they were having this sword fight, and I was going, I have to include a reference to The Princess Bride, because the sword fight in The Princess Bride is quite possibly the best sword fight on screen ever. So I do have the left hand comment, and those of you who don't know the film, that won't make any sense to you, but it will when we show the clip. So roll it there. This is Princess Bride.
Here I am or not, you've been more than fair.
You ready then?
Here I am.
That is a wonderful, wonderful movie. I'm going to say something really smart about it too, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, there. No, it's gone.
It'll come back to you, sure.
Yeah.
Just.
Oh, yes.
Go.
For those of you who were wondering, that is the bloke from Homeland. And also, it is the guy from Saw, who sawed his own foot off.
For those of you who have seen that. Which actually is interesting. I think in terms of the certain ages, obviously there were some clips we talked about, and like Army of Darkness or Akira or some other films that actually probably wouldn't show to an audience that has such a kind of range of ages as here.
Yeah, there were, and you know, like, I also wanted to show The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing starring Kurt Russell, and I wanted to show that because in Mortal Coil, it's all about, you know, it's like an invasion of the body snatcher thing where all these gremlins fly about and infect people and basically turn them evil, and you don't know who to trust. And so The Thing is the perfect example of that kind of paranoia. It is a sublime movie. Don't bother watching the remake
Definitely don't bother the remake.
Prequel, but watch the original. It is glorious. But you know, like movies from the 80s, and we only have one clip from a modern movie, but movies from the 80s have just, you know, and you know, I was a kid in the 80s, and these are the kind of things I saw on video, and these are the kind of things that have influenced me as a writer. I think, you know, as much as books have influenced me, and as much as comics have influenced me, and they have, and to an enormous degree, movies. I'm a very I'm a very visual writer. I don't like really getting into the characters' heads. I prefer to let the reader interpret their feelings through what they say and what they do, and the facial expressions, instead of, describing the doubt or the skepticism. I will have a character who plays an eyebrow in a particular way, and that is how I write, and that is how I think of things. I think very visually. And it's it's these movies. It's The Thing and The Princess Bride, and Escape from New York, and like Big Trouble in Little China. I watched it again a few years ago. Hilarious. It stars like Kim Cattrall back when she was normal, it was it's awesome being me.
In terms of age limits, the first 6 books have all got kind of like the 9+ sticker on them, but the most recent book has got 11+.
Yes.
And obviously that, one way, I guess, reflects the fact that the readers are kind of growing up as you're writing the stories, but...
it's also, it's like Valkyrie, she started out at 12. In the last book she was 17. In this book, as people who have read my Twitter will know, the weird thing, Twitter. But I have just written a scene that has been in my head, because these are the last 2 books. There are a lot of scenes that have been in my head for years, and I've just written the scene where Valkyrie is celebrating her 18th birthday with her parents, and it's a scene that I know what's coming up, because it's the benchmark, so the character is getting older, and the core audience, the audience who were with me from the very beginning, is getting older as well. I also have to keep in mind that there is a constant resurgence of new readers. There will always be a 9-year-old who picks up all of these books in one go. So I can't go too far. Like in Kingdom of the Wicked, there's a scene where my 2 superpowered, my hero and the villain are fighting at the end, and they are superpowered, and they will punch each other through buildings. And Darkess, she picks up like a fence post, like a big fence post, and she throws it at her enemy, and it hits him, and it splinters, and he falls back. And then she picks up another one, and she throws it, and she keeps on throwing them like darts, and keep on hitting them, keep on splintering, and he staggers back. And that's fine. Originally, though, she didn't pick up fence posts. This was in the middle of a street. She picked up people. And she threw people like darts. And people hit her enemy, and they exploded. And heads and arms. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is possibly the best thing I will ever write. But apparently, it was too gross. So I had to change it to fence posts, which is a lot less funny. But then I do end it with, and then she hit him with a horse.
I love that. And that's when Valkyrie hit him with a horse.
I do have to keep in mind that even though the character is now 18 and the books, it's the cliche, but they are getting progressively darker. Because as a writer, in a series, I defy you to find a series that does not get progressively darker as it goes on, because you can only keep smiling for so long before something horrible happens. But I do have to keep in mind that there will always be a constant resurgence of young people.
What you're just saying about the epic fights actually is a nice segue into my next clip. You've got the super villains now, we're going to see.
Yes. And this, in particular, I described Deathbringer as the darkest superhero story you will ever read. And there are a lot of allusions to the superhero genre and comics within it. But the big fight at the end between the good guy and the bad guy, it takes place in Dublin, over Dublin, in the streets, smashing each other through buildings. And basically this would lead us perfectly onto Superman 2, where Superman faces General Zod and his two lackeys. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, I know you love it. It's just impossible not to love it. For those of you who haven't seen it, forgive the ropey effects. They might look stupid to you, but back in like 79, they rocked. Okay? So if you can see Superman 2, I actually have the suit he wore. I just started out, I just had the cape. Now I have the full outfit.
You were saying earlier about you not being a nerd.
That's not proof of anything. It's not like I wear it. I wear it. I collect memorabilia and props and costumes, apparently. They're all in mannequins around my living room, which is like a museum. You can't live in my house, but you can admire it from afar.
So Tanith Lone, who I really loved in the early books, and then turned bad, went to the dark side.
Yeah.
She's about to, before Book 8 comes out, have a little sojourn of her own.
Yeah, and this is. I mean, I've especially at the start, in the first 3 or 4 books, I was asked a lot, why are you so mean to Tanith?
And she was about to get together with Ghastly.
Yeah, exactly. It was a happy ending there. Happy ending. Fortunately, things don't always work out well in my books for the characters that I love. And my agent is actually in the audience, and it's her fault. Because Mary's not Mary had publicist.
Yeah, sorry, Mary.
You see, this is the kind of relationship I have with my readers. It's annoying.
So the new Tanith book's about to come out.
Anyway, so I wrote the first book with Tanith, and Tanith was awesome. I love Tanith because she's young, she's blonde, she wears leather, she runs up walls, she has a sword, she's awesome. China was the ultimate femme fatale, you know. She's the mysterious one, the enigmatic one that you see all the time in private eye movies. Tanith was my action hero. She was awesome. But in the final fight between her and the White Cleaver in the first book, she was killed. I killed her. I unmerciful, because that's the kind of person I am. But then my agent read it, and she said, I love this book, I love it, I knew you could write a book, I love that you could write a book. One slight problem, you can't kill Tanith. Because it means you close the book, and instead of going, I love that book, it was wonderful, because you go, I like that book, unfortunately the bit where he killed Tanith, I'm crying now. So I said, okay, I will keep her alive, under the condition that I get to torture her in every book. So she's been shot, she's been stabbed, she's been thrown off a building, beaten half to death, and now, yeah, she does have a remnant bonded to her soul, which turns her evil. And so for the last few books she has been evil, and I figured, and I got irrationally guilty a year and a half ago, after the book, after whatever book it was out, because the readers, the fandom, and they you can see it online. There's a huge big family that has been built up, and whenever a book is about to be released, they go nuts. And you know, they just hype it up and hype it up and hype it up, and they get so excited. It's so cute. But then I always feel really guilty, because then when they finally get it, and they're so happy that they get it, and they read it.
They're getting bigger each time.
Yeah. But they still read it in a few hours. It takes me 6 months to write. And then they have a year until the next one. So after all this excitement, this built-in excitement, boom, it's gone. After another year. And I felt bizarrely like really guilty. So I said, okay, I'll write just a short little book starring Tanith. And it kind of, you know, to like keep them satisfied, you know, halfway through the wait. And it actually kind of morphed into something a little bit bigger than I actually have a copy. Oh. So I was handed a copy.
Read it.
I was handed a copy today. It's the first time I've seen this.
So that is the very, very first copy of
See
the
the
Magnificent
back?
Seven.
Isn't
And when does that come
cool?
out?
That's like in March. Start of March.
28th of March, reliably recorded.
It's really good. It's really well written. And you should buy multiple copies, because you might lose one.
Give it to me now.
So the Magnificent Seven, again, obviously, it's in the Magnificent Seven, it was Hugh Brenner who recruited six cowboys to defend a small little town. In the Maleficent Seven, it's Tanith recruiting 6 other villains to plan a heist. So again,
time is not on our side. I know we're going to get some questions in shortly, so what we're going to do, I'm going to dash the next clip,
okay.
a quick gallop through that, and then because I want to make sure we get some time for these
The
guys.
next clip, we were originally going to show Akira, which is an anime movie based on a manga, which was out in the 80s. It's a sublime film. And when I came to write Kingdom of the Wicked, I wanted it science fiction. I wanted it to have science fiction ideas. So there are like alternate universes, all that kind of thing. Akira was a big influence on me because in it, an ordinary boy was given these huge big powers and it completely corrupted him, which is what happens in Kingdom of the Wicked. Now, because Akira is a bit too old for some of the younger members of this audience, we're instead going to show a modern trailer for a film called Chronicle, which was out last year, a fantastic film, but basically it is Akira. It was as influenced by Akira, even more so than Kingdom of the Wicked. But yes, we can show that now. It's awesome.
Get this on camera.
Those are the last few years, and they aren't even in tights.
So Book 8 is on the horizon. I know we're not going to get the title out of it today, but it is forthcoming.
Yes.
Even though I thought I might try and apply a little pressure, but I don't think it's going to work. Is there anything you can tell us about Book 8 that is not kind of in the public domain already? Any kind of little sort of tease or exclusive you can give the good folk who are here about Book 8? If they beg you. If they shout, please, 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 Derek.
Let's see.
Please.
Okay, let's see. It's just, it is war. It is utter and total war between the sanctuaries around the world. It's really these last 2 books, it's when I have to actually like knuckle down and work, because all of these plot lines, all of these threads, all of these themes and storylines have to be wrapped up in the next 2 books, and so this has been building since the very start, and we get the culmination of a lot of separate storylines. We get like the man with the golden eyes, and we see more of the warlocks, and then because really what this series is about, it's about Valkyrie, and it's about, from the very beginning, I wanted to write a series about a good guy, a hero, who realizes that she is destined to be the villain. And so that's what it is. That, and you know, that isn't a revelation. I've said that from the very, very beginning. You know, when she realized that in the fourth book that she was the villain. I'm not cheating here. She is the villain. Yeah, the last two books are
Creation of Darth Vader.
yeah, except not in a bad way, not in a rubbish way. They're going to be pretty traumatic.
Okay. I think that's a really good tease. We're going to open up, and if you've got some questions you'd like to ask Derek, this big audio recorder, so if you wait for a microphone to get to you, like she uses you, but you want to put your hands up, or try and get to a good kind of cross-section of people. So we're going to start off with, to make the ushers earn their money, go to the very back row. There's a little boy standing up there. And then the second question will be, we'll go with the very front row, second, just over here.
Okay.
So let's have question number one.
Now, when you are handed the microphone, sing your question. Maybe you will dance, I don't know, it's up to you.
What's the new book called?
That's a fantastic first question. Unfortunately, it's the one that I'm going to say I'm not going to tell you.
Can you tell us what were some of the ideas you had?
Some of the ideas were Skulduggery Goes Camping, which is a book I do want to write. I think it's a story that has to be told. Kind of like the Famous Five, except it's Skulduggery Going Camping. It actually, with the titles in general, Skulduggery Pleasant, obviously, awesome title. The Faceless Ones, obvious. Dark Days took me a while to come to. Mortal Coil, I always wanted to call a book Mortal Coil, it fits. Deathbringer, obvious. Kingdom of the Wicked, rocks. The only title that I'm not happy with is Playing with Fire, the second book. And I wanted to call it Blazing Cain, but apparently that's too biblical. Some very controversial author. I after a lot of months of conversations with my publishers, I eventually settled on Playing with Fire. That is the only title that I don't absolutely love. Now, with the title for Book 8, I have had this title in my head for the last few years. And unfortunately, I can't tell you what it is because we're going to have a big reveal on the blog. But rest assured, it will explode your brain.
Okay. We're going to have question number 2 there. The question number 3 will be on the aisle, just a bit further down here. Could you keep going down to the hand up in the glasses there. So question number 2.
Who was your favourite antagonist to write about?
Tesseract, I think. Tesseract is my favourite bad. Darkess is my favourite because the destruction, the wanton destruction she causes is just so innocent. You know, she'll pull your arms and legs off because she wants to hear what kind of scream you'll make. It's lovely. It's sweet and it's so much fun to write a character who technically is a villain, but she's just, hey, the thing is, Darkess is just so far beyond us that none of our ethics or our morals apply to her anymore. So it is a joy to write someone that carefree. But Tesseract, the assassin in Mortal Coil, was a lot of fun to write about because he was unlike any other villain. This wasn't personal. He didn't have some grand scheme. He was a hitman. And the thing that changed everything for the readers, okay, they're reading his book, and then as he died, at the very, very end, he said, the only thing I will miss about life is my cat. And suddenly he becomes this tragic, romantic figure for readers across the world. I love Tesseract, I love him so much, just because you know, I allowed them to see that, you know, like bad guys aren't all bad. You know, sometimes they do kill their cats. Yeah, what happened to his cat? His cat tragically died in a terrible blender accident.
After you've completed book 9, are you going to continue in the kind of Skulduggery Pleasant universe with just one-offs or completely new?
No. No, it'll be completely new. The Skulduggeries is 9 books, and then I'll be cutting it off completely. Because the thing is, I don't even know how it ends. You know, I know what the last book is about, obviously, but I don't know how it ends. I don't know if it's a happy ending or a sad ending. I don't know if they live or die. If one of them sacrifices themselves to save the other. If one of them kills the other. You know, I mean, all of these, let's be honest, they are very possible. So I don't know how it ends. Yeah.
Okay, next question is Danny.
If you had to write another book, what would you call it, and what would it be about?
Are you an aspiring author? Do you want to get my ideas? I will squash your brain. My next series, I'm not entirely sure what the next series after Skulduggery will be about. It will be in the same kind of vein. I'm not suddenly going to write something without jokes. I tried. I would get to page 3 and suddenly my characters would rebel. They have to tell jokes. And it will be the same mix of genres of horror and comedy and adventure and, you know, everything else. But I'm not going to tell you what it is going to be about. Twerp.
We've only got time for a few more. We've got, we're going to go for Uber Fangirl in the front there, then we'll go for...
Hi, Becky.
Hi, Derek.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Is that alright, Derek? Is it alright to ask her?
It's fine.
Don't mind.
She'll corner me eventually.
Yes.
Okay.
I feel very important with this microphone. The GoldenEye guy,
Uh-huh.
are we going to find out who he is in the next book? And is it possible that he's a character who's been in the scene all along with a name?
It is possible. That's what I've been trying to hint at. Now, what you've got to think, though, is I do a lot of red herring planting. I plant fish. So, you know, I mean, I'm keeping in mind all the time, especially because you guys are all also invested, and you really do think a lot about these characters and their motivations. So I have that in mind. So I know if I write something, you guys will automatically assume something. And then I know that you will go, oh, wait a second, no, he might mean this. So I know. And so everything I write, I'm trying to triple and quadruple guess you in order to keep it fresh. We will see in fact, the whole man with the golden eyes conspiracy is a huge part of the war. So we will see him, we will see who he is, whether or not we have seen him before, whether or not we've just heard about him. That's always a possibility, I'm just saying. Yeah, it'll be, you won't be disappointed.
So there are lots of exclusives coming out. We'll go to our final 2 questions. We've got 1 question there, 1 question there. So.
Yes, so what would you have done if you weren't an author if your first book failed?
That's really unlikely.
Wow, okay. Thanks for that one. So basically, if I was a failure, what would you say? Okay. I'm incapable of doing anything normal. Kind of. I have a pathological hatred of being told what to do, and I always have. I messed up in school. I messed up in college. I failed my final exam in school. I was kicked out of college. I had to spend the next 10 years working on the family farm. In that time, I taught myself how to write. The difference between a writer and someone who wants to write and never does or never succeeds is it's a sliver. It's like, you know, there's a hairbreadth between the two. I sit up here as the amazing author of fantastic books. You all love me. Let's be honest, you love me.
Yeah.
The difference, though, between me up here, now that I've made it, people go, he was working on the farm, he had no money, he was in debt, he had messed up in his entire life, but he kept the faith. He kept believing in himself, he did not give up, he had a dream, he saw it through to the end. Isn't he wonderful? He is to be admired, right? And all this, and that's absolutely fine. But if I didn't get the idea for Skulduggery, okay, and the idea of it just popped into my head, if I didn't have that moment, then instead of being praised for keeping my dream alive and seeing it through, I would be condemned for being a useless waster of a dreamer who is deluding himself. And that's the difference between, you know, success and failure, and like praise and condemnation. It's a moment of luck. So if I didn't make it, if I wasn't a writer right now, I would be trying to be a writer and I would not be giving up. But, you know, I might have spent the rest of my life not giving up, just never making it. So being a writer is not exactly a career that you can recommend to anyone, because it's you know, I don't want to like depress you, you know, any writers. But seriously, if you do become a writer and you knock me off the bestseller list, I will hunt you down and kill you with a spoon. Just putting it out there.
Okay, so as briefly as possible.
Last question.
Very, very final question. The very, very covered to final question. It's going to be a really good question, this one.
Oh, it's good. It has to be.
The anticipation in the room.
Because if it isn't, I'll kill you.
Are you ready?
Out of all your books, who is your favourite character?
Oh, okay. I love writing Skulduggery. I do, obviously, because he's the title character. You will notice that every chapter is from a certain character's point of view. Okay, it's from someone's point of view. It's never the writer describing what is going on. It's always from a certain character's point of view. They don't know what's around the next corner. We, as a reader, only see and hear what they see and hear. I will never go into Skulduggery's head. It will never be from his point of view, because Skulduggery is the enigmatic, mysterious, and dangerous loner with a past, and you never really want to get too much into his head. Also, he's a genius, and that is very hard to write. For me, it's easy, because obviously, but for other people, not so much. But my favorite character is probably Valkyrie, because I realized that when I first started, and I realized, okay, the title character is Skulduggery, but the main character is Valkyrie. I based her on a friend of mine. I based her on the most admirable girl I knew. And so I need to love Valkyrie. I need to, because I've spent the last 7.5 books with her, in her head. If I didn't love Valkyrie and Skulduggery, I would not be able to write these books. Which means that in the final book, if either of them dies, or both of them die, then, you know, that is the reason there are no more books. Because I can't write these without them. So, you know, that's why 9. I'm not saying that they will die. There's a high probability, but I'm not saying it. So my favorite character is probably Valkyrie. My favorite villain is probably Scapegrace, because he's a moron. I love Scapegrace. And now there's this whole thing between himself and Thrasher. This is lovely. You know, I'm doing my bit for equality, you know, and the rights of gay zombies. I think it's very important. It's a niche that has not yet been addressed, but I am their advocate. So yeah, it's but you know, like I love all of my characters, I really do, and and yet it gives me an enormous pleasure to kill them. Oh yeah, in the next book there will be a major death.
What's that for us? Very, very shortly outside, there will be books on sale, and Derek will be going out and signing them if you want to part with your hard-earned cash. Yes, we're going. So I want to thank Linton Tams of the South Bank Centre, who put together this amazing festival. A massive thank you to Mary Bird and her team.